Hello and welcome to my crypto presentation. Here we'll be taking a look at on-chain crypto data for a beginner trader. We'll be taking a look at a few metrics to try and predict future price action. Okay, so here we take a look at the NUPL metric. This metric stands for net unrealized profit loss, and it takes a look at the difference between the unrealized profit and the total unrealized loss in the market on each coin. So here we have the price of Bitcoin in blue, with the NUPL metric shown as the bars. And these bars can take 5 different colors. They can either be blue, which signifies euphoria. Belief is green, which usually in a markup phase. Optimism is yellow. Hope is orange. And red, we have capitulation. Now, what are we looking at here? Well, when we're in capitulation, the market is said to be extremely bearish. People are selling their coins out of fear. Fear is very, very high in the market. And historically, we can see that these moments of capitulation in the red are usually very good buying opportunities. When we're in capitulation, investors are not acting rationally, and they might just be selling out of pure fear. And usually these are good opportunities to get into the market. As you can see, capitulation signified the bottom back in 2011. It also did in the bear market of 2018, and buying at any time during this capitulation period would have been very beneficial. Same here back in 2019, we had this capitulation period. Similarly, when euphoria is reached, the blue bars, it almost always corresponds to a local top in the market. So it might be a good time to start taking profits when this value reaches euphoria. It's very interesting. And here on the right, we can actually play with these filters. So if we grab just the euphoria, we can see that the exact times that euphoria was reached here in 2011, 2013, 2014, and the last time was actually in 2018 at the peak of the 2018 bull run back then. So if we reset this, as we can see, if we look at current price data, there hasn't been any extreme values of either euphoria or capitulation in the last 4 years. But it's good to keep an eye on this in case we do reach those levels. I mean, here, if we zoom into the price action over the last few years, you can see that there was one capitulation bar during the March 2020 crash, when crypto fell. I mean, Bitcoin fell to $3,800. This would have been an amazing signal to buy during this capitulation period. So yeah, so that's NUPL. So let's take a look at BTC 1 year plus non-active supply. Now, this metric is very interesting because it acts as a sort of leading indicator for future price action. So here we have price in blue, and in orange, we have the metric percent of Bitcoin not moved in over a year. So what does this take a look at? This looks at the supply of Bitcoin that has not moved in over a year in the wallets. So it takes a look at what the whales are doing and what the long-term holders are doing of Bitcoin. So how does this work? Well, if we take a look at the peaks that are formed, so if we take a look at this first peak formed back in 2013 on the non-active supply, this was at around about 48% as a peak. Now, when we break this high, this next high, the next time we break it, this acts as like an indicator to show that there's a markup phase coming. So we've broken the previous all-time high of non-active supply. This has now reached 51%. And from that point, it actually signified a turning point in the market where the markup phase started and then price rallied up. And actually, price reached its peak when the non-active supply reached its trough. And it started coming down way before the price reached its peak. So this could have been a good warning to people during this big run-up, big mania phase, that the long-term holders were actually unloading their coins during this big run-up, which makes sense. And so we want to see the next time that this all-time high is broken to get our next markup phase. Here in 2019, it was not broken, and we did not get a big run-up in price. We got a sort of a fake bull market. But next time we broke it, up here actually in July of 2020, we reached 62% of Bitcoin's 1 year plus non-active supply. And that actually predicted the bull run that we got in 2021. reaching $64,000 per Bitcoin. And this was after the break of this metric. And so we're keeping an eye on current day. We're getting close to it. We're coming up to 62.4% of the supply non-active for over a year. And I'm looking to see when this breaks the previous all-time high for us to get our next run-up in price. Okay, so now let's just take a quick look at the active addresses. I find this metric interesting because it's useful to find divergences between what price action is doing and what actual sentiment in the market is, and what the on-chain data says. So here we have price in blue as usual, and in orange we have this metric active addresses. And it just really shows the activity on the blockchain compared to what price is doing. So if we see that here we had this really big run up in price, it went up and then it went higher the second time, 67, this is Bitcoin. If we look at this active address metric, it peaked out here on the first top, but on the second top, it didn't even come close. You see, here we had 1.2 million active addresses and here barely a million, whereas we did get higher price. So this is what we call a divergence, where price goes up, but the on-chain data is telling us that there's less activity going on the blockchain as price increases, which is never a good thing. And this reduction in activity could have been a big indication that we might get some short-term bearishness, which is what we got. I mean, we've had 5 months of bearishness, and it might continue even lower. And this, I mean, looking at pumps, it's very important to keep in mind how strong that pump is, because if it's not strong, then the drop will be quite large. So yeah, so that's why I like to look at this active address metric from time to time. Here we take a look at supply and profit. And supply and profit is a very interesting metric because it kind of plays on human nature and the fact that when too many of us are in profit on our coins, we're going to take profits naturally. People who see profits will eventually take the profits. And this just shows that there's an upper band and a lower band. Lower band is from 50% and lower, and the upper band is from 95% and higher. So essentially what this says is that when less than 50% of the supply of the coins are in profit, then it's usually an extremely good time to buy and to get in, because not enough market participants are in profit, and so they are going to hold on to those coins until they are in profit and not sell. That is the reasoning behind it. And usually this is a very good indication of when the market is overly bearish. People are selling their coins out of fear. Maybe they're being liquidated through derivatives. But as you can see, the lower bands here, when we dip below 50%, this would have been an excellent buying opportunity back here in the bear market of 2018. Down here and down here would have been pretty much the bottom of price. Back here in 2015, these all would have been extremely good buying opportunities, apart from perhaps they would have been a bit too early. But yeah, here we just got a little dip back in 2020. This would have been a really, really good buying opportunity to get Bitcoin cheap before the bull run. It did just dip below that 50% buy signal. And on the top side, it can be a good signal to sell, but I would trust the buy signals more than the sell signals, because naturally, as Bitcoin is an asset that just goes up over time, there will be times when it's overextended, but it still pumps way more. For example, here we reached 98.4% supply and profit, and yet the price was only getting started on the run up. So we must be careful on these parabolic run ups not to take profits too early. But it is still interesting that it shows that the market was overheated back here, for example, in November. This would have been a pretty good signal to maybe get out of the market before this period of bearishness. And so, yeah, so this is supply and profit. Here we take a look at the fear and greed index. And this index is an oscillator between 0 and 100. And essentially what this shows is, how is the market feeling? What is the market sentiment? Is it greedy? Is it fearful? And what does that mean? What does that tell us? How can we use that to our advantage? So in general, the market gets overly greedy when prices are rising and overly fearful when prices are dropping, which is normal. Sometimes you get huge events, for example, cascading liquidations, which just cause extreme fear. And this is what leads to the capitulation in the NUPL, is these extremely fearful times. People just sell their coins because they don't know what to do. They don't want to lose more money. And usually this is the wrong thing to do. Usually what the whales are doing is that when you're selling your coins out of fear, they're scooping it up, right? And fear and greed can be a good indication, usually of either a bottom or a change that's going to happen in the market. If you look at usually these red bars are followed by a period of pump or a slight relief, right? And you can see the transition from red to orange to yellow to green, and then this big run up, right? And here we've had this fearful moment. This is the time when you want to start entering. This is when you want to start looking for buying opportunities. When it's green like this is when you want to start unloading your bags and start selling. So the fear and greed can be quite interesting. If we take a look back here, so yeah, so you can clearly see that these troughs created by these fear and greed index, if we compare it to just a few months later, we take these and we compare it to when it's greedy next, the change in price is over 130%. One could create a trading strategy where he buys when the market is fearful and just sells when it's next greedy. It seems to be pretty accurate, even on longer time frames. So it's always important to keep the fear and greed index in mind when looking to enter or exit the market. As for current day, on larger time frames, we are still fearful. It is a good time to start dollar cost averaging into the market and to start buying, but it may not be the bottom. We might still have some more fear to go before we hit a bottom in the market. So that concludes the analysis of the on-chain metrics from NUPL to supply and profit, active addresses, fear and greed with price. That concludes my analysis, and I hope that it was useful for trying to predict the macro tops and bottoms in your trading. Thank you.